The Lotus meta has changed, and it's going away from Viper in general. And you can see this in the games that happened just yesterday in the EMEA League. This is all of the games that happened in Tier 2 EMEA yesterday on Lotus. And take a look at this. No Viper in sight. We got a KO Gecko. We got a Breach Sova. Double Initiator instead. We come to a different game. We've got no Viper in sight. We got Fade Breach. We've got Breach Sova. We come to a different game. We got Gecko Breach. We got Sova Breach. Again, no Vipers. We come to a different game. We got Breach Fade. We got Breach Sova. Again, no Vipers. This is the only team, Fireflux, Kiwi's team. They were the only team yesterday in EMEA Tier 2 that played Viper. But their opponents played Breach KO. No Viper. And then finally, another game here for Send. And again, we've got Breach Fade. And again, another Breach Fade. So it seems like in general, where double controller was dominant on Lotus for all of last year, why have we shifted now to double initiator? What has caused that change, and what does that mean for the map? Well, the first reason is pretty obvious, right? It's the Skye nerf. The Skye nerf is obviously come into effect and is going to change how effective double controller can be, because for what Skye was doing with both the flashes and the info, you could argue that Gecko can somewhat do that, but I think you'd have to argue that it's nowhere near as reliable necessarily as Skye was at doing that role. And so then you don't think that anyone can really do what Skye was doing before, so you need two initiators to fulfill both the flash aspect of Skye and the information aspect of Skye, which is why you're seeing a lot of Breach Sova, a lot of Breach Fade kind of stuff going on right now, as we saw from those team comps. But some of you will be thinking, and correctly so, didn't Fnatic win all those games on Lotus last year, playing a double controller with a Fade and without Skye? And then other teams also started copying Fnatic, and maybe they were running an Omen instead of an Astra, but it was still double controller without a Skye and a Fade. So this can't all just be the Skye nerf, because why aren't those teams just playing the old Fnatic stuff and playing double controller with a Fade instead? Well, that is a very interesting question, and I do think we will still see some of the old comps like Fnatic. I think Fnatic themselves will probably still run the same comp if I had to guess, and I think we will still see some of that in Tier 1. And you still do see it in Tier 2 as well sometimes. The thing is, though, I do think this is going to be an interesting debate amongst the teams and like the philosophy of how you approach the game. I feel like some teams just, they want to flash. They just are used to playing with a flash, and so they will just want to flash. And that is just the end of the debate. I want to flash, right? And we saw that last year, that teams would copy the style of Fnatic, but they didn't go all the way with the Fade, and they just stuck with Skye instead, right? Because they've just always played with a flash, so they're going to keep playing with a flash. But then, of course, there are map changes which happened as well, and maybe those map changes did make double initiator a bit better, because, of course, with the map changes, what we saw is a bunch of the added 50-50 angles, right? That before, you could just look this way, now you have to clear both sides, right? And obviously, double initiator is going to be good for clearing all of these little extra angles that have been added into the sites, right? Like, that's what double initiator is going to allow you to do, whether it's with flashes, whether it's with, reveals, whatever it is, the initiators are going to be able to help you clear some of these extra angles that people might be playing in now. And with those extra angles, particularly going for big site execs got quite a bit harder. And I think particularly over towards C, having a double initiator can really help you attack that site, whereas it might be difficult with only one. And Ascend will show you now a really good example of what a double initiator C exec can look like.
I właśnie do tej rundy będą podchodzić zawodnicy SC.
I teraz Rizwan musi mieć się na baczności, bo na jego część mapy chce bardzo szybko chyba wejść. Formacja Ascent, oślepiony jest Rizwan i chyba musi oddać swoje życie za darmo. Tak też się dzieje. Jak nie przez Alewa, to przez Badiego. Shai również upadnie. Tutaj absolutnie Sejmik nie radzi sobie z defensywą Spike'a do i Karol.
And when you watch that round, I mean, it is really, really impressive, the exec that they managed to do. Now, interestingly enough, Ascend are actually playing a Jet instead of a Raze. And I was really questioning, like, why play a Jet instead of a Raze? Surely Raze is just better. And I do think Raze is still better. But I think part of it might be this C exec because of what Alive does and how he manages to do it, right? Because you're going to see as they come in here, all of the utility hits. It's insanely good, right? And I do think that for this dash and updraft here onto this with the Cloudburst, that this is probably one of the reasons that they picked Jet. Obviously, I know that, a Raze can double satchel, from out here and still end up on top of the box, of course. But they're not going to have the smoke to necessarily, shield them on top of that. It's probably going to be a bit harder as well to just do it. You might miss it every so often, right? Whereas with the Jet, it's probably just a bit easier to do overall. And, I mean, the utility here is insane, right? So you get this flash coming in here to blind the Omen. If you look over towards the Killjoy is going to get hit by this Omen flash. The Fade Horn is then going to land up here. That's actually going to reveal both the Omen and the Killjoy because both of them are blind, and so neither can shoot the Haunt. And this Omen ends up being, just in a world of of trouble, as we see. But then the Killjoy also gets revealed and then gets chased down by the Fade Prowler as well, so gets blinded by the Omen Flash, then doesn't shoot the Prowler because they don't know that that's coming because they're still blind from the Omen Flash, and then they run into an Aftershock and die as well. I mean, it's really, really good stuff, right? You see that this Omen is just in a world of trouble right there, and, you know, there's the Aftershock. You see the blind again coming onto this Killjoy, just no chance. Really nice exec, and I mean, if you can consistently do, you know, execs like that, you can see the power that Double Initiator could potentially have. Another thing, of course, we saw in a lot of those team comps was the Breach being played. And Breach, of course, one thing that he's going to be really good at is these early fights that you see towards A, right? Whether it's stuns in here and getting control for the defensive side. There's also, you know, now that the barrier's changed to here instead, you know, you can get up here as a Breach and stun across this way, which means that even if they do start to come out of A, you know, you can still stun and you will probably still hit them, right? Even if they do actually get out here early on, you know, they might be able to avoid that one, but not the one that comes down here. And this goes for both sides as well, of course, because with all of the flashes and the Aftershock as well that Breach can provide in this early fight, I mean, you can pump a lot of utility in here to make sure that you are winning this early A fight, which is so crucial to this map. And that's the thing for Breach in general on this map, that, you know, when this map first came out, and I remember doing my review on, like, which agents were good on Lotus, I said that Breach was gonna be really good. But then Breach barely saw any play in VCT last year on Lotus. But to me, that was less about Breach being good. Breach was good the entire time, but he just didn't synergize with the meta that we were in, right? Versus Double Controller, Breach just isn't that good because his flashes are often going to get blocked by, you know, all of the walls and all of the smokes that are up. So he just doesn't tend to find as much value, you know, versus a Double Controller comp. But if that starts to recede and we start to get more Double Initiator, then you will start to see a lot more Breach, and Breach will become very effective on this map. Another thing that's going to become a lot more effective in a Double Initiator meta is this Omen one-way out towards A just here and holding this in general. And I used to rail on these pro teams for putting up this one-way against the Double Controller comps because it just didn't work against the Viper walls that you would see, as you can see in this clip from EG.
Stop her in a couple of rounds prior, but then also lock down these big offensive tools to try and take space. Remove from the EG arsenal.
The waves now of utility. It's the Prowler and a Boombot initially, but now they've set up control of this one, and here's the second wave from EG. They waited it out. It is perfect! Snake by Nanoswarm, Pain Shells, there is nowhere to run. Attempt to pick up the gun, but denied for now. Still, Loud realize they have to give up that space.
And so if the one-way is going to be a bit more secure and attackers are going to have to respect that one-way perhaps a bit more than they used to, that could be big for the defenders over towards A. And just feeling a bit more secure and confident about maybe the timings that attackers are going to take in terms of them trying to retake any space towards A that they might have lost earlier in the round, which again is just helping the defenders. And of course with the added benefit of, you know, the extra space that maybe you've got to play as the defenders now, and, you know, the changes to the barriers over in towards Tree as well, perhaps it's feeling a bit better in general to defend over towards A, and Omen potentially got a bit better with this kind of one-way setup, you know, meaning more than it used to. But for me, what's exciting is this is more than just about Lotus, I think. Sure, on Lotus, we have now an interesting debate, right? We could see a Double Initiator, but maybe Fnatic stick with Double Controller and they dominate everyone still with Double Controller Fade, and everyone just goes, maybe Fnatic are just right, and everyone goes back to Double Controller Fade, right? But maybe we'll have that debate and we'll have to see how that plays out. But to me, this is bigger than just Lotus, right? This could apply to potentially all of the maps, or at least a significant amount of them, where Double Controller either was the meta or was becoming part of the meta. Maybe that starts to move out and we get different, fresh ideas on some of these maps on how to play, because without Skye, you know, kind of being the linchpin to Double Controller and its success, you know, we could see different ideas thrive. And that is an exciting thought, that maybe some of these maps might be more interesting in terms of their meta development, although not Ascent. Ascent will stay the same.